Morning Wide Bay, it's Christian Mac McKenna with you today. On this trip, we are going to find out what it's like to run as an independent in the political arena.
Just because you're different to everyone else isn't a disadvantage, it's an advantage because you have a voice that someone else doesn't. So I guess that belief that your voice counts and it matters is the first step.
We're also going to check out what's happening right now in the Wide Bay music scene after COVID dropped the people's elbow into its chest.
And we'll drive the point of the elbow.
In case you were wondering, the people's elbow is the Rock's signature move. Yes. Tim Earl from the local band Dogwood Crossing, he's going to give us the rundown.
Basically, it was you've got to do something. You've got to feed your family. So I was fortunate enough, though, to have friends that have real jobs and were able to hook me up.
And coming up, we hear from a mum who started taking a PT Cruiser off-road in areas a car like that has no place being. But she did it in order to help other families like hers with members that have life-limiting medical conditions.
There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes and things like that, but that 4 days is just magical. The stories that you hear from anyone and everybody that's been on one is just amazing.
But first, I'm going to check in with my good mate Dustin Curry, a local bachelor man who was the guiding voice behind a beautiful sculpture erected in Damon Park earlier this month. Here's our yarn.
Hey, Gullingo Dali, Macca.
I'm sorry I got you up off your mundi for this one.
Oh, brother, anytime. We've got to get up and move around a bit more often on my jinnungs.
Well, I know you just had your Jengar full. It's tucker time there at Camp, eh?
Yeah, mate, yeah, it's not too bad here, working out in the curry here on Mitakootie country. It's always a pleasure to get back to that ocean breeze on Butcherley country.
Absolutely. How's the grub there at work?
Absolutely outstanding. Unfortunately, there are no witchetty grubs, as you white fellas like to call them, but maybe they'll come in season soon, with a bit of rain.
But the cook's doing all right there at the moment, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, man. They do a very substantial job here, and there's always opportunities for, keen young people people think they're going to get into the mines and go and drive trucks and things. But like everything else, man, you got to work your way up, so that means starting in the kitchen.
So, Dusty, I wanted to talk about the Scar Tree. We were there the other day. It was just such a beautiful day.
Wait, come on. Look, Mackie, you're not going to keep calling it a Scar, are you?
Okay, the Kundu.
Well, these are different elements, but like to tell you, brother, is that what's left behind is a scar, of course. But that scar is a form of trauma. And that trauma is just like those that present themselves on our bodies. But the delicate and deliberate way in which the bark that left the scar was removed from the tree, that's the most important bit, man, because that's the visual representation we see our ancestors having been there before us. I want you to think about this. If there is a place in your world, it might be an old house or it could be one that your parents still live in, where you tie back to a memory of something happening ceremoniously, a ritual, a cooking of a dinner or a favoured dish or something that happened in that space. For me, as Butcherla Bilan, the Butcherla people, when I go to these culturally modified trees and I stand in the footstep of that tree, it's telling me that I'm back here and I'm on country. And I can say without doubt that I'm standing in the footstep of my ancestor. That is my connection. It's not just a tree. It's not just shade. It's not just habitat. It's a living connection to a totem, to a moiety. It's something that ties us all back to the landscape. Does that sort of make sense there, Mac?
It does, mate. And this beautiful sculpture in Damon Park is absolutely remarkable. It was wonderful to be a part of the opening of it. Now, if we were to refer to it, Dusty, what would we refer to it as? In
this sense, we'd refer to it as the object in which it lightly constructed that piece of bark. And that's the undu. It sometimes is a little bit hard for non-Aboriginal people to get those words right, but it's a bit of a strong guttural sound where we pronounce a G and a K at the same time, and it's very easy to miss. We would say it's the gundu.
Gundu.
Yeah.
When you were there, you got everybody who could to put their hands in ochre and then place their hands on the sculpture, yeah?
Absolutely. Because by doing so, that's giving those who were there for that ceremony, and it is a contemporary ceremony, by placing, by choice, your hand in that ochre and placing your handprint on the kundu, or that representation thereof, that's demonstrating that you are now a custodian of this object. You have a responsibility. You have heard the story of how this came to be. And this is you demonstrating your ownership and your responsibility. This is the way.
Yeah, I remember you said to people before they put their hands on it, you said, this is power. This means that you have to continue this legacy and this story.
As we all must. We must never let the stories die. They only die when our voices go silent and the stars stop winking.
Absolutely. Well, if you haven't seen it, get the family together and go to Damon Park. Grab yourself a coffee at the store there and walk over and have a look at this terrific monument to our local people. Well, Dusty, I really do appreciate your time, and I think we have to catch up for some grub soon, hey?
Absolutely, Macca. And please remember, as you stare across the waters of Corowinga, the Great Sandy Strait, and you look across to Round Island, to Big Woody Island, and further in the distance to Gurry, that you remember that silver sliver of stainless steel. Think of yourself in that canoe and how you would traverse those waters in a vessel like that. It's always my pleasure, Macca. Thanks for listening, brother.
In the last decade, once a year, I've dressed up like a lunatic. With 3 other crazy mates, piled ourselves into a mid-90s four-wheel drive with no air conditioning, travelled from the Fraser Coast to rural Queensland on a thing called the Dunga Derby. The website describes it as, the 4-day car rally adventure will travel from the coast to the bush and back, with a field of 55 cars and support vehicles, having loads of fun on the way. Well, I can personally vouch for the loads of fun bit. The majority of cars on the Dunga Derby are 10 years or older, hence the name Dunga. The dates are from the 28th of July to the 31st. And on Wednesday afternoon, I headed to Dunga HQ in Torquay to chat with the inspiring Amy D'Amico, who drives Car 22, the PT Cruiser, which is almost unstoppable, this thing. It's amazing the things that I've seen this car being able to do, like climbing over rocks, hill climbs, water crossings.
In its 5th year this year, it did have a little bit of issues in 2020. We had to replace the clutch, but she's back on the road and ready to go.
Perfect. Problems in 2020?
Yeah, it just had a little bit of a clutch issue. So the clutch stopped working. That was in Proston. Remember how we did through the sand pit? We got bogged, kept everyone waiting for 45 minutes. So, yep, but chucked it on the back of the tow truck. Love you, Sam. And dragged it back, got it fixed.
Absolutely amazing, this car, because we were following and we went, don't know if this car's going to make it. Boom, it made it. Don't know if this car's going to make it. Boom. This thing was an absolute beast and became quite a legend on the Dunga Derby.
It did. When we first looked at the car, we thought, we'll get something a little bit different, but we didn't think it was going to be this different. There's nothing we could do to raise it. It's the height it is. There's nothing you can do to make it go any better or anything. So it is what it is. There's stock standard PT Cruiser. Yep.
So, Amy, you were a civilian when you first got involved with the Dunga Derby, but there's how many different roles under your title?
So I'm the event officer for Dunga Derby, Fraser Coast. I'm also the bookkeeper for Rally for a Cause, and I'm the secretary on the committee.
Tell us about the initial involvement with Dunga Derby. It came with your son, right?
It did. 2017, we were trying to do a fundraiser for my son to get some medical equipment, and I got a phone call from Kerry. I'd never heard of Dunga Derby in my life, even though I'd lived in Fraser Coast for 20 years now. Kerry rang me and said, hey, we can help you out, and I burst into tears, hung up on her. But ever since, haven't looked back. Yep.
What was the medical equipment?
So I needed to get a hoist. At the time, my back was extremely... I could not lift my son anymore. He was... How old was he? 15 back then. Yeah, I had really bad back issues. I needed to hoist. To get one through normal conventional ways was just near impossible. So I thought, bugger it, I'll fundraise and buy my own for him. So, yeah.
The Dunga Derby has been doing this since its conception. Originally, it was through Cooper, who sadly passed away from leukemia. And it was a group of friends getting together with some cars worth under $2,000, and they were travelling around to make this money. It made a huge difference to that family, but Dunga Derby's tradition just continued on after that.
Yes, it has, and it's continuing to continue on. You know, we're expanding into the Sunshine Coast as well, so we're helping families there as well in that council area. It's just one of them things that it gets in your system, it gets in your blood, and you just need to be involved and help as many people and get as many recipients that we can. Yeah.
I've always believed that you can have fun and do good things at the same time, and this charity is one of those charities.
Most definitely. There's nothing more fun than Dunga Derby, that's for sure. The lead up is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes and things like that, but that 4 days is just magical. The stories that you hear from anyone and everybody that's been on one is just amazing.
One of the reasons why I think Dunga Derby has been so popular in this local area is that, unlike other rallies, it's a 4-day tour.
Yeah, so ours is unique in that it's only 4 days, which is just long enough, but not too long. You still get a lot of places that we go to, so it's a coast to country. So we leave in the same place, we go places unknown, and then we come back to the same place that we kicked off from. We get to see amazing countryside that people wouldn't necessarily see. We get to see and enjoy country hospitality as well. So it's magical. You just can't beat it.
And all your family's involved now as well.
Yes, I'm slowly getting everyone involved. So my husband's got his own car, which my eldest son as well gets in with him. So yeah, and my car, 22, is now an all-girls car, which is really phenomenal. So grabbing people from other cars and a friend from up in Rockhampton.
And if people are interested in getting involved with Dunga Derby for the Sunshine Coast or the Fraser Coast, what's the best way to go about looking into it?
Okay, so you can contact either myself or Fiona, so Sunshine Coast at dungaderby.com.au for the Sunshine Coast, or myself, admin at dungaderby.com.au. Give us a call, get on our website, send us a contact information through the website as well. Lots and lots of ways to get involved.
It's a fantastic cause and it's just an amazing trip. You don't know where you're going, and that's a part of the fun as well. Can you give us any hints this year? Normally you just tell us what to wear.
Yep, it's going to be cold and it's going to be hot and it possibly could be wet. Is that enough?
I've learnt absolutely nothing from that, but thank you very much, Amy. Great chatting to you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Macca. Have a good one.
Since 2020, the pandemic has disrupted every part of our lives. Sadly, it destroyed the music makers in our community, whose livelihoods depend on playing in front of people. The financial impact, self-worth and mindfulness that comes from performing in front of people was taken away. I caught up with a local Wide Bay musician, good mate of mine, Tim Earl, from Dogwood Crossing, at the 19th hole at the Hervey Bay Golf Course, to find out what's happening right now in the live music scene. Warning, a beer or two may have been harmed in the making of this story.
Don't you dare stop dreaming. You're so close to the top.
I think it's about time, Timbo.
Oh,
Cheers.
yeah, absolutely. How are you?
Good, mate. Nice sitting here on a golf course.
This is my pick for spots in the bay, sitting here at the Hervey Bay Golf Course. So, yeah, another beautiful day in the bay.
So this is the life of a muso, hey? Just hanging out at the golf course, seeing where the wind blows.
Yeah, I'd love to say that, that's the case, and, it's all beers and skittles and all the rest of the fun stuff. But no, once I finished all my chores at home, washing, dishes, bit of vacuuming, bit of mopping, then I venture out for about an hour to the golf club.
So, mate, it has been an interesting couple of years, and that's what I wanted to talk about, was what has happened in the music scene since COVID.
I'm sure you've seen the fallout with the entire industry worth billions of dollars collapsed pretty well all at once, overnight really, not just state by state, but right across this great musical nation of ours. Over the 2 years, a lot of creative stuff has still come out, as you would have seen, people with podcasts and people doing stuff from home, but as far as the industry, festivals, riggers, gaffers, soundies, techs, roadies, everyone out of a job for years, so pretty harsh.
So for the first time in many years, you actually had to go and take a straight job.
Yeah, well, if you could call it that, I went straight into debt collecting. So that was good for me. Basically it was, you've got to do something. You've got to feed your family. So I was fortunate enough, though, to have friends that have real jobs and were able to hook me up.
So what do you do now? Obviously things have reopened. A lot of the laws have changed. Pretty much everybody can go to the pub again. Have you seen a change in the venues themselves?
If I was to be completely honest, yeah, I would say in the last 2 weekends since everything's gone back to, everyone's allowed to coexist again together at the pubs and clubs. Like, they were already busy and flat out before, but very busy, very packed. I think a lot of people too that had never been out in the last few years, they've sort of come out and no one's explained etiquette to them or, how to go out and have a good time without beating the shit out of each other.
Well, that's something that a lot of people haven't realised, is that there was a group of 18-year-olds who are now 20 that never got to go to the pubs and clubs.
Yeah, exactly right. And these guys have been, playing their Call of Duty at home and watching their UFC fight pass and think that that's the real world, and came out and I guess they're not so versed in being able to just relax at a pub, They wanted to get those 2 years' worth of bent-up anger all done in one night. So, yeah, a lot of frustration, both from the publicans but from the punters as well. So I think it'll simmer down, but really good numbers at musical, at shows and festivals. Right across Australia, they've been kicking it.
So it's almost like a whole re-education is going on with how to behave when you go out to see live music and see live events.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's a matter of re-educating people as to why they go out and getting people to sort of think more along the lines of being entertainment focused, going out to be entertained, not to be the entertainer themselves. Sometimes it's all right to take a back seat and just relax and chill with your mates and have a few beers and get on the dance floor and get into it, sing along to your favourite songs.
How do you see the music community and the music scene progressing in the next 2 years, Tim?
Oh, with great vigour, really. I think the federal and the state and local governments have all rolled out a lot of development and arts funding. So it'd be really good to see them advertise it better to the musicians and people in the industry. But I think with the help from the government, state and federal and local, that we will see those festivals come back. New festivals will be created. A lot of new music out there that's been cultivated and worked on over the last few years. And so there's some really good stuff coming out.
When you look at the next year, mate, how's your bookings looking?
I think we're very fortunate because we've sort of been here and done it for a while. We've sort of been able to pick up where we left off and get right back into it. So the duos are keeping us busy. The local pub scene's keeping us really busy with the band as well. So now it's just a matter of firing up the party machine and getting another single out and hit the road. Cheers, brother.
Get you when you fall.
When I say Saturday, May 21, 2022, does that mean anything to you? Some people I know are having a party that night as they watch for TV results across their screens. Some know they have something to do that day, but are unemotional about it. While others have no idea what I'm talking about. That's the beautiful thing about our democracy. We're living in a free country, free to think in different ways. May 21 is, of course, the day for the federal election. We've all started seeing people shaking signs on the weekends, billboards going up with giant heads on them, and extra bits of fire starter for our backyard fire pits being dropped into letterboxes. Well, it is for me anyway. What has always fascinated me is the process of going from a backyard barbecue with your mates and someone saying, "You should run for politics," to someone getting off their butt and actually doing it. I took my microphone to the car of former Fraser Coast Deputy Mayor Stuart Taylor to find out what it's like running your own campaign. By the way, for people looking on when we recorded this, it may have looked like a stakeout or something much worse.
Mate, it's always great to catch up. I think we've been in this car before having an interview, so it's interesting that we're back here in the same car. People probably wondering whether we're selling drugs again.
It does look a bit weird, but it is important that I catch up with you because we have got a federal election on the way. It's just down the road. And I wanted to talk about being an independent. So originally you started off on the Fraser Coast Council.
Yeah, well, my first election that I ever won was the Fraser Coast Regional Council in 2012. It was a very interesting campaign. It was my first experience in campaigning. I think my budget for that campaign was $2,200. I did a lot of walking, a lot of talking to people, and I was really immersed in the community. So from that perspective, it was amazing that I got elected. The second election, my re-election, some 4 years later, was a little bit more complicated, spent a lot more money, probably looking at about $10,000, I think, if I remember correctly. And then coming into a state election where I ran as an independent, I got about 10% of the vote, and that would have cost me somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 from a state. If you're looking at a federal campaign as an independent, you would probably have to spend somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000, but I would imagine the Labor and the Liberal National parties, one of their mail-outs, for example, Keith Pitt's mail-out would probably cost $100,000.
Now, how do people come up with this sort of money, Stu?
Insanity, I guess. Look, it's everyone's different. Some people have got money that they can work towards. I had an aspiration that I wanted to run for state politics, and I had a wife that really wanted to support me in that. So we funded it pretty much ourselves. My mum and my dad supported me. I had some other support, but pretty much most of the work and most of the money had to come from our pockets. And a lot of people say that that's crazy. Look, running as an independent, you're behind the race a little bit because you don't have the power of the majors. But from my perspective, I wouldn't change it for anything. And I remember hearing people say that who have lost elections before. But for me, it was really true because you got to participate in democracy. And there was something really special. Like, I got 10% of the vote, but I reckon in Hervey Bay when I ran for state, I would have had 50% of the voice when it came to talking about issues that really mattered to me. And I was able to engage with the community. It was a really special time. And while I lost, it really showed me that there is an incredible value in independence in politics.
How would people go about getting started? So there's obviously a lot of us out there that go, I reckon I could make a real difference if I got involved in politics. How do you even start? Where do you start from?
Well, I think from my perspective, it's the belief and understanding that your polity or your politics in a community should reflect the diversity of your community. So if you see the same type of person running for politics in your local community, then that should alarm you, and you should stand and be counted. Just because you're different to everyone else isn't a disadvantage, it's an advantage because you have a voice that someone else doesn't. So I guess that belief that your voice counts and it matters is the first step. The second one is having faith in yourself and deciding that because you want to do it, regardless of the outcome, don't fear failure, just go for it, give it a shot. You'll never regret trying and failing. You'll always regret never trying.
It was always a big goal of yours to run for state. That has run its course. That was a number of years ago now. Would you do it again?
No. I guess when I left local government and I lost an election, so I've had the privilege of winning an election, winning a re-election and losing an election, and then losing a state election shortly after that. It was a really good experience. But there is something about politics that I really don't like, and that is the clock. The moment you get elected, there is this clock that's ticking. And it's ticking to the next election. And as you get closer to the election, it's really unnerving. It gets louder and louder and louder. Because if you're trying to raise a family, if you're trying to develop a future for yourself and for your family and for your life, you're out of a job if you lose an election the next day. And from that perspective, that clock, and for someone who, like me, who likes certainty, wants to build my own future as well and have a legacy, that's pretty challenging. So it's a really challenging role to go into a job and know that you're going to lose it eventually. So for me, I'm here at work, I'm the business manager, we're about to grow and expand, and I'm a part of that expansion. So for me now, in my stage of life, I'm loving what I'm doing, and I don't necessarily want to go into a job where there's that uncertainty, or should I say there's an absolute certainty that you're going to get fired eventually. Every politician has to step down. That's the way democracy works. So I'm very happy where I am.
One of my friends ran in local politics. He was running as an independent. He had been involved in politics in Canberra before, but he said it's a game for mugs. I feel that it's such a dirty game. How did you go with that side of things?
Yeah, look, part of me says that politics is grubby, and that's the way it's meant to be. And I don't mean grubby in the sense of nasty things, but you have to prosecute matters. You have to actually, if you disagree with something, you have to be willing to stand up and say it. So it is an adversarial type of role, because you are challenging, whether it be as an independent running in opposition to the major parties. The only reason you're running is because you have a point of difference or you have some issue with the way things are being done. You should have some robust discussions. I never had an issue when I was in council with any councillor or any mayor, and there was a lot of them, having a shot at me about my work ethic, about my decision making, about anything. That's fair game to me. So I don't have any issue, and I've never had, I think I had the mayor tell me, I think he told me I should resign. I had other councillors who attacked me as well. It never really bothered me, because I always thought that politics should be adversarial. If you're willing to stand up and do that role, then you should be willing to be criticised. I didn't take criticism as a negative, but certainly there is an undercurrent of bad behaviour in elections that I think needs to be addressed. And I think the Electoral Commission is doing a lot of that, but it's also potentially making it a little bit bland as well, so that the major parties have the benefit, and you never want that either. You want them to have to work to take on and lead this country.
For younger people that are thinking about getting into politics, maybe running as an independent, is there anything that you could suggest that they read or watch?
That's a really good question. The first thing I'd say is find a mentor. Somebody that aligns with your values, but also understands your own values. There is a great book if you are socially minded, and it's called Soul of a Citizen. Really good book. It's Americanized, but if you can take away from that some incredible things. But I think from my perspective, if you are interested, do it. Stand up, be counted. Even if you run a cheap campaign, even if you have to run a $500 campaign or $1,000 campaign to do it and to be a part of it, or you want to support somebody else who's running and you agree with their values, get involved, do something, be a part of something, be a part of your community and get engaged. Never go into an election, any election, not knowing who's on the ballot paper and what they believe. Be encouraged, go and see them, ring them, ask them the questions, challenge them, and vote for the person that aligns to your values. And then when you feel as though you've got an understanding of the politics around the Australian system, then go for it. Give it a shot. Never hurt anyone. There's a couple of mugs already in politics, so you can't be any worse.
What about watching West Wing?
I loved West Wing, but I loved it for its written form. I didn't necessarily think it had any relevance to Australian politics. If you really want to see what politics is about, I suggest you Google Question Time between Paul Keating and John Howard. That'll certainly motivate you if nothing does.
I actually knew the Leader of the Opposition before the Liberal Party gave him a makeover in the 80s, when he had those Menzies eyebrows, before they gave him the Bugs Bunny teeth.
Who gave us the highest level of foreign debt since the Great Depression? Paul Keating. Who gave us the highest... Oh, it's all right for him to do it, but it's not all right for me. It's all right for him.